into accommodation more quickly. Other areas that we've really focused on in the past year is really trying to maximise the amount of Welsh Government capital grant that we're able to utilise to create new homes in the city. And as you'll see in the report, we've managed to secure 18.4 million through the social housing grant, which is the kind of the core Welsh Government grant, and a further just over 10 million in terms of the transitional accommodation capital programme. And that's for properties that are specifically focused on supporting people who are either in temporary accommodation, threatened with homelessness, or supported through schemes like the Ukrainian Homes for Ukraine scheme. So huge amounts of work there to kind of really try and, as well as investing in staff, to try and begin to increase the supply of housing that we've got available to us with our RSL partners. As Councillor Dan has touched upon, we also joined Leasing Scheme Wales in the last financial year, which is focused on properties in the private sector, making a very different offer to landlords, where we're leasing properties on a longer term basis and offering a range of incentives to landlords to do that. And the team are beginning to develop a really kind of healthy pipeline of properties now, which is really, really good. It's never going to be the big ticket answer, but it's an important way to kind of subsidise our supply. Obviously, kind of housing and homelessness is often our key focus in these meetings, but I think it is worth just touching upon some of the successes within the community side of the service. So, as you'll see in the report, the library service had a really successful year in their events and encouraging more participants to attend those events, particularly over the summer holidays, where we're really focused on trying to support children to maintain their literacy rather than that lagging during the period they're not in school. Similarly, within kind of the community service through SPF, we're also able to access additional funding to continue the warm spaces work in our partnership with Gavo, and a really successful project over the winter just gone, with kind of almost 16,000 attendees. That's a 2-year project. We'll be doing something similar over this winter. And the ACL service again has been able to increase the number of people attending their services. I think lastly, from a connected communities perspective, we've again met the prevent targets. We're working really, really hard at the moment following a period of not having a manager and a bit of kind of flux within the teams to develop a strategy that's really going to kind of focus on how we support people to settle and resettle in the city. So that's kind of the overview from my perspective. Open for questions and comments.
I make a note here on page 121, the TACF, probably something temporary accommodation, and the wider social housing grants. There are a substantial number of properties that you were able to acquire through that, at an average price of £11,000 each. So how did that sort of work out, and is there any more of it going?
So it won't be, so there'll be a mixture of properties within that. So within kind of social housing grant, for example, we don't pay the full value of those properties. So ourselves may be securing other loans. There may be examples of accessing other types of finance. TACP, a lot of those properties are focused on actually, it says in the report, refurbishing voids.
Right.
So that's ongoing. In terms of our planned development programme for social housing grant, that's looking really, really healthy at the moment, which is really good news. In terms of the TACP capital grant round, so we received our allocation Monday just gone. The initial allocation is about 7 million. For this year, we've got about 3 million already allocated within that grant, and we're working proactively with RSL partners now to plug the gap.
So there's a potential there to acquire more properties.
Absolutely.
For about 11,000, which does sound like very good value. So
Congratulations. That's under the TACP rather than social housing.
Yeah. I don't understand the difference between, but this meeting's gone on quite long enough, so don't stop telling me. There was just, we know about, there was mention of the trauma informed support, which you're now providing to people who are approaching the council for housing. I can guess, this is sort of a support I assume that's been available from the private sector for quite a long time. So you're bringing people from the from the voluntary sector into the housing team, or are you training your housing team?
So in terms of the kind of trauma informed approach,
like
that's the approach we're taking to people coming through the system. So we brought training in to existing staff to begin getting them kind of trained up to work in.
So they can work in that trauma informed way. Yeah.
It's probably also worth saying though that through the restructure, we have got more staff working on the front line, seeing people coming through the door. So we've been undergoing kind of quite a big recruitment drive there. We've got, I think, 6 new starters within the team who are joining at different points through this month to kind of fill those gaps. But it is really an ongoing process of how we work with people.
Yeah, I'm sure that we're aware. This is a dreadful start to children, where they find that their accommodation, the place that they should be able to call home, has been so disruptive through the misfortune or the circumstances of their parents. We know that an awful lot of landlords have given up the ghost and just in sometimes, you've mentioned this a couple of times in the report, in very unscrupulous ways, they've forced people out by doubling the rent and things like this. They've just, and I've come across cases where I really don't think that they've been legal in the way that they've issued notice to encourage people to go. But support to those children, because this is such an awful thing, a traumatic thing that can affect children's development. Then, are we working with parents so the parents are actually able to support their children better? Because you've got parents in crisis, and it's not a good environment to be in, is it? And the parents probably don't have that force, that insight. And what about organisations like, I can never remember which one it is. Is it Flying Start we've got in the city? Are we signing people into Flying Start with their children?
Absolutely.
Right.
So we managers in my service regularly engaged with Management Prevention Inclusion Service. We run Flying Start.
Right.
Also through the homeless programme, we have a specific working group focused on families in temporary accommodation. Flying Start colleagues are part of that.
Right. Okay.
And in my initial conversations with Councillor Dan, this is an area that you're really keen for us to look at and explore further, isn't it? So it's a developing piece of work. By no means are we where we need to be at the moment.
But we're going in the right direction.
This is a real focus. It's, for me, there's kind of 2 priorities. There's creating the supply and the system in the medium to long term.
Yeah.
But what we can't do is, whilst we're focused on that, lose sight of the fact that there's particularly children in temporary accommodation. So there's something wrong. And this is something we're really trying to focus on at the moment to develop that.
Just to touch on that as well. We had a meeting earlier on, didn't we, David, about that. It's reaching out to grassroots organisations. I think there'll be mixed views about the broader homeless programme, but just to obviously address the immediate pressures on the ground, it's important that we liaise with community groups who are aware of the local context. So whether that is through support programs, access to services and community hubs, etc. So that's the approach we're looking at as well, and that will obviously be a simultaneous program along with the homeless program.
Just beyond the children again as well, is there was mention of a food initiative. Is that holiday food initiative continuing?
Yes, we're talking to Gavo about running the grant program.
Okay.
That's the approved yesterday.
Okay, that sounds
Sounds
like
like
you want to check that. And then later on a different aspect of this, I would like to return chair to toilets.
Okay, councillor Reid.
Sorry.
Pick you up on that one shortly, Kate. I just a couple of things. This is you've had the merger now of the homes, or this which has got ongoing with the city homes developing. It's two questions there. What's the effect of that on the city council? Assuming it's a positive effect, but what's the effect of that? And they, I think, looking at their website, they say they can build 500 homes, in the coming year. Is that, do you think, from the council perspective, is that realistic, or do you think it's council looking at what we're doing with increasing number of social housing units, etc., with splashing grass, that the council which be pushing back and saying, no, actually, we need to build more within that first year?
I think just on that, I think talks are ongoing, aren't they, David? And it's premature, I think, to comment or elaborate on that. However, I think with the new leadership in place with Newport City Homes, the new, hopefully the new chief exec may bring about different ethos to how we operate locally over here. But yeah, I mean, we're happy to write to you in the future in terms of progress.
Yeah, I mean, I asked a question to you, did I at any time come and speak about that process? One of the areas that concerns me, and I think it concerns you, but I won't speak for you because I've seen those comments in planning reports, is that they're now building a number of homes for sort of open market rent as opposed to sort of for social rents. And yeah, there seems to be a shift in approach, or there has been a shift in approach from the others. And I'm hoping by the merger that we might grapple that back a bit, because whilst we do need some market homes and discount market homes, we need more social homes as well. So it's sort of getting that balance, and I'm hoping that relationships will be constructive. You can probably tell from my question to you, cabinet member, a bit concerned that kind of we'd lost a lot of support and control from people. That's certainly what I see from the outside, and you may experience something different inside. So, but they've certainly gone away from their core purpose, I feel, over the last 3 years.
So I think it's on that chair. It's historical, obviously, decisions that have been made. But I think, our current administration, we're a forward-looking administration, and it's about moving forward and see how we can work with the new leadership of Newport City Homes.
Yeah.
And again, I'm happy to write to yourself and Councillor Reeks. Housing is not a political matter, so to speak. It's a broader issue, for everyone.
Absolutely, anything we can do to support them. 100%.
Just come back in on a completely different point, and we go on Kate's thing of the toilets, because I asked this question in the council a little while back. But situation with the page 131.6, talking about the local toilet strategy. This still hasn't been done. Should have been done by the actually putting to should be done by the end of May 24. Because you had 2 years from the last review of when council was elected, which was 22. At the moment, it's still showing on the website. Local toilet strategy is dated November 2020. So this is an issue. It might seem a trivial issue to some. It's a big problem to a lot of people, not just people, but across. So can we have a timescale on when this local toilet strategy is going to be updated?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to the manager responsible. I had assurances it'll be done. We'll be able to publish by end of August, beginning of September.
It would be really good, yes, to get to actually be able to see what it means. What changes are going to be made. Okay. And certainly, I think there's a lot of groups, particularly with older people, some of whom, we have anecdotal reports that they don't go out because if they don't know they can find in the toilet when they need to in the appropriate place, it's a major problem.
Well, there's a thing, there's a scheme that
Yeah.
they call it carrier E card, and somebody can actually take one of these cards and they can go into, for example, council hall and say establishment, show the card, say I need to use your toilet. That brings about its own problems. So obviously, it's important that we as a council have the right strategy in place, so we can accommodate that. Without people having to be embarrassed with saying, "Look, I'm going to tell I need to use your, need to use the toilets."
It's a fair point, Councillor Rex.
I've been kicked at no end in Beechwood Park, because the public toilets have been closed there since COVID, unless a public park. And there's a toilet with a cafe. And my brother come across rough sleepers in the park, which were completely relying on the cafe toilet. And they always been pretty helpful and kind as he is, but that closes at 5 o'clock. And I know people shouldn't be sleeping rough, but then when they've got nowhere to go and they want somewhere safe, then a public park seems to be one of the safer places because you're not going to get bothered as much. But I think the other thing that we could do, and I've seen it in other cities, is, and again, it comes down to expense and all the rest of it, is some public showering and cleaning facilities. Because I've known people over the years who have not necessarily been homeless, but they've not a permanent place to go. So they'll sofa serve, so they'll stay with a friend for a few days and then they've got to move on elsewhere. In between those gaps, they need somewhere to shower or use the toilet.
It is available in places like Eton Gate.
But again, in most cities where there are public showering facilities, blocks that you can go in and you can be let in and let back in. We had the leisure centre, we've got it at the moment in the city centre, and we've not got any toilets in the city centre. The other issue I wanted to raise, and it's easy to say quite heartless when it comes to homelessness, but not homeless people, rough sleepers, vulnerable adults, they create a lot of problems as we see it in abundance in certain areas of Newport. I'm not sure if it's a strategy of housing associations or the council, but there seems to be a lot of vulnerable adults now being either rehomed or taking up temporary accommodation within city centre. I've worked with fire services, so we turn to quite a decent building on a regular basis with the alarms going off. And again, they don't spend an awful lot of time indoors, they tend to be out in the streets. Is this a strategy of the council or housing associations to focus the rehousing strategy within a city centre? Or is this just happened by chance, or am I getting confused? And it's not the case. That just seems to be where a lot of vulnerable adults are meeting and gathering at the moment. There's a lot of places that I've noticed that a lot of the refurbs are being done by Paul and Newport City Homes within the city centre. And the long-term vision and strategy for the city centre is to attract people in to use the facilities. Coming across adults who are under the influence of drinking drugs and they've got their own issues that is obviously getting people to use the city centre.
What's the most of the services are in my ward?
Yeah.
That's why for a disproportionate number of people that don't do. I mean, perhaps you two would like to add something.
Yeah, to add on that, you made a fair comment, I'd say, Councillor Thomas, on Councillor Pym's question, and it's also in my ward as well, Pilgrim,
Yes, obviously.
which are close to the city centre, and you do get lots of these services, in terms of the clinics that are available to them, the hubs, etc. It's all in that central area. So you're quite right in saying that, Councillor Pym, but it's also, I think, the type of accommodation and what's available at that time in terms of housing those particular individuals. If David wants to add on to that.
Yeah, of course. So just kind of from a partnership perspective, firstly. So we have the rough sleeping task force group that meets, but we have a subgroup feeding into that, which is kind of focused on the supply of accommodation for kind of single people or childless couples. And I think we're in a position at the moment where over the past 4 years, our duties to that group have expanded. Firstly, during COVID with the No One Left Out, and then due to kind of subsequent changes in our legal duties. And I think kind of that has meant, Councillor Adam has highlighted, that we've had to go and acquire new temporary accommodation for people absolutely rightly so, because everyone needs kind of safe place to live. What we're hoping to achieve through the increasing supply group is making sure that we're able to begin developing and acquiring the right type of accommodation for people with often more kind of complex needs than the average person coming through our processes. And that needs to be a real mix of accommodation. Some of it might be shared, but increasingly kind of best practices focused on what we call a housing first model, which is kind of providing people with their own front door, basically, somewhere that's not, not next to another person with significant support needs and another person and wondering why often, tenancies fail over and over again. So it's a developing picture. For me, one of the key kind of focuses for the team over what we're doing it at the moment is, as well as looking kind of for new accommodation, working with our RSL partners, see whether there's any kind of types of that accommodation they can take on management from us for. Two reasons. Firstly, I think they're better placed to do that because they've developed that capacity and expertise over many years. Secondly, it can help from a housing benefit subsidy perspective. There are specific regimes that RSLs can access, and we don't use the subsidy. So that's one element. And alongside that, it's about really kind of, this is a real priority at the moment and a focus for my teams, ensuring that we're getting the right level of support into the accommodation and really kind of perhaps, I think we've ended up viewing that accommodation as temporary accommodation. It's supported housing really, and we need to get to a place that's really functional like that. So we're really meeting people's needs as far as we can. Again, whilst we're bringing on the supply of more kind of bespoke housing options.
Councillor Cleverly.
Thank you, Chair. I need to come here and speak about this, about homelessness. We have a chap living in a tent on the side of the canal between Bettis and Malpas. I found him there in April and I sent an email to the rough guide person, and she sent me an email back saying that he's been put on the list for temporary accommodation. He's still there. When I spoke to him in April, he told me he'd been in this tent since the 5th of March, and we're now nearly at the end of July, and he's still there waiting for temporary accommodation. What help is there for people when they're in a tent like that?
Yeah, I mean, take it briefly, but perhaps you can also have a conversation with Councillor Cleverly afterwards as well.
That's what I was going to suggest, Chair. If you can send me the details, Councillor Cleverly, more than happy to look at it with you.
Thank you.
One thing to say about rough sleeping is that we have the rough sleeping coordinator with the Salvation Army, and we're making changes to the frontline teams to be able to work more effectively with people with needs. Oftentimes, if the council does have a statutory duty, which it doesn't always have, to people who are out, it's not just a case of getting them in somewhere. There's often a lot of kind of fear, stigma, risk that needs to be managed to try and make sure that placement is safe for them and for others. But absolutely more than happy to have a chat with you outside this meeting, Councillor Cleverly.
Okay, thank you, David. I will be in touch with you in the morning.
That would be great. Sorry, Councillor Cleverly, just to say, I meet weekly with the team to look at people sleeping rough in the city. So, yeah, tomorrow morning would be perfect if you Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Sorry, Alex. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, just coming back to social landlords. You've touched on it briefly. Have we got any powers to force them to bring back into circulation their empty properties? Can we force them in any way? Is it just through encouragement?
I think with our social landlords, it tends to be that kind of enabling approach.
Yeah.
And as you'll see in the report this year, last year, I think about 77 empties that have been into use. What we're also currently engaged in at the moment is through the transitional accommodation programme. I mentioned again, reaching out to our RSL partners and looking to ensure that when they do have any long-term voids, because there's always going to be churn, there's always going to be voids through the estate management process, that we're absolutely kind of on the same page with them, that you know, there aren't any options to use that funding to get them back into.
Actually, Councillor Rees was next. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Rees.
Okay, yeah, on page 136, you talk of the sanctuary plan. Could you just give us an update on that, where we are with it? Because it says a member of the team tasked with writing a sanctuary strategy for Newport. It's only 50% done at the moment, and we're an end date of 30th of September. Where are we with the strategy?
Yeah, so it's in development at the moment. There's been a lot of work to kind of look at where we are internally as an organisation and look at, you know, how we're set up to engage with people who, you know, recently moved to the city. There's also a monthly working group with kind of third sector organisations that's looking at this issue. So it is being written at the moment. I have to say, you know, it's kind of, when we write these things, as we delayed with scrutiny, I suspect this is something that is going to slip slightly. I mean, that's the timescale that we're going to have to look at.
Is Councillor Harvey still leading on that? Or has that changed?
No, it's now Councillor Trent.
Any other questions? Councillor Thomas, yes.
Thank you. I don't want to dwell on things that just happen in the ward, because I think this report is obviously about the whole city. But it just has happened that I've had quite a few people, I probably on a monthly basis, have somebody who will write directly. It might not be them, but it might be their mother or somebody else, for us as councillors to intervene in getting them a place, because there is something highly unsatisfactory about where they're living. And we all know as councillors, you know, that we are not allowed to intervene in that way at all, and we should try and skew things. We know that you have far better, more comprehensive systems for establishing what their needs are, and you've obviously got the connections to meet their needs wherever you're able to, far better than we can as individuals. But what I have had fed back is that when people, for example, their landlord has told them that they have to move out, clearly there are Rent Smart Wales and the Welsh Government have brought in quite strict requirements now, which are not the same as England. They're far more, far more protective of tenants' rights than England have ever been, and maybe it will be years before they actually catch up with us. But if they've been given, say, notice to leave the property that they're in, they're saying to me, well, you know, that they've tried to approach housing options or the temporary accommodation team, and they're told, we cannot do anything until you're actually homeless. When that's the situation with the family involved, that's really tough. You know, so I don't know, I know that you would recognise the difficulty for them, their emotional state, if they're having to wait until the very last minute. You know, I mean, it's very bad, you know, I mean, people's possessions, you can imagine them out on the doorstep, and they don't know where they're going to go. You know, if we have to stick to that strict policy, but are we in a position where we can think about help working with people at that stage before that, you know, so that all options are explored with them, and they have their at least they can have the discussions with you prior to actually being out on the street.
That's one of the kind of fundamental things that we set ourselves with achieving through the restructure.
Right.
You know, people should, in the future, when they approach us, be worked with in that kind of person-centered, trauma-informed way, and there should be a focus on a couple of things. Firstly, most importantly, focusing on what can be done, if at all possible, to prevent homelessness by negotiating with landlords. There's rent arrears, look at affordable repayment plans, looking at if people can be diverted from going through the homelessness system. And that's going to be one of the key focuses of the new frontline service. Obviously, that isn't possible in all cases. We often get people who approach who are homeless on the day, and there's nothing we can do to prevent that. So again, that real focus on trying to divert people, it's really difficult at the moment where we do need to place someone in temporary accommodation because we just don't have the stock at the moment. So it often becomes that last minute thing, which isn't ideal. And hopefully through the restructure, some other initiatives that will begin to lessen. But what I would say through the restructure is that one thing I've observed, really, when I only ever see cases when they go wrong, really, whether it's a counsellor or a member's inquiry. I've often observed people almost kind of going into temporary accommodation, and it's almost people are just being passed through the system like that, which isn't satisfactory. I think kind of probably sometimes reinforces that sense for people. So from within the new structure, frontline, the person being a client proceeds first, focus on trying to prevent their homelessness, will remain responsible for finding a housing solution for them, even if they go into temporary accommodation.
All right, that sounds
So there
very
should be
positive.
some more continuity. As I said, we've done the restructure, just kind of completed training for existing staff, we're now training the new staff. So that should really begin to embed. And one of the key things that we do, hopefully, is give the frontline team a bit more capacity, smaller caseloads to do that work, which they haven't had since the pandemic.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Empathy is everything, isn't it? You know, when somebody approaches in crisis, and I think some of the feedback I had when I first became counsellor a few years ago was there wasn't much empathy in that team who approached the team. I think they were probably so stressed in the workload that they had, and they were trying to manage expectation. They would just tell people how shit it is to try and manage the expectation. And I don't get that so much now. So I think my perception is that there has been a shift in the way from that restructure and the training that you've put in a way that kind of people are dealt with, certainly from the feedback. I don't get those complaints anymore, but I used to get them a lot. So, you know, that's commendable.
That's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, there is thank you for raising that, Chair, because actually looking at sickness days lost, you've got a lower rate of sickness than the average rate in the council, which is sort of counterintuitive if people, or you would expect that as an indicator of stressed staff. So, well, congratulations on that one.
Yeah, and you know, when you look after and do trauma-informed training, I don't know, just sort of trauma-informed training, actually that teaches you to look after your own well-being as well. So it does teaches you the tools to look after yourself as well as empathy. But on that point, it would be remiss of me not to raise the bi-monthly check-ins with you. And you haven't necessarily got the excuse of the other two departments, because you know your staff are more office based. So
So I think there's a couple of things in relation to that. I think actually for a portion of my staff, it is similar to the other areas, particularly in community regeneration, where we've got caretakers, that kind of type of staff, and we also have quite a few tutors who maybe work for us, 12 hours a week or something like that. So that's part of it. Within the kind of community cohesion and connected communities area, that is really attributable. We didn't have a full-time management post until Christmas. I think from the housing perspective, I spend a day in the housing office, and I think it's one of these with lots of contact. Team leaders are really, really present, but what we need to get much better at is discipline of formally recording voice check-ins and that support, and kind of just as some assurance. All of my managers have got an objective around check-ins, which they're cascading to team managers and then to team leaders. So there is that kind of clear expectation set that, check-ins are non-negotiable. Actually, particularly if you're trying to work in a trauma-informed type way with people, it can be really tough when people are dealing with far more complexity. within housing and homelessness than they were pre-pandemic. So we need to get much better at making sure that support's in place.
Yeah, reflective practice is really, really good. So, but what I would say is your draft makes yours look worse because you've set it out in smaller decimals. So it looks like your target's further away, but it's actually not as bad as some of the other areas. You might want to have a look at that later.
Well, that's another point.
Just a question to the cabinet member, if I can. Got a number of things with Welsh Government at the moment. So the Rapid Housing Transition Plan and the LMHA, I think, are all on this report with Welsh Government. So, you know, I would say those things are holding up us up, making sort of progress. What can you do to kind of get those things feed along and out the back of the door into us so we can start making some progress, really?
I'm happy to write to you, Chairman, on that. We do have a plan in progress, and I will certainly write to you.
Yeah.
I can write to all members if you wish.
Yeah, you can give an update to the committee, to be honest. It's, yeah, I'm sure your team want to get on with some of the stuff
Yeah.
there, and they probably are.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
I just think we had at least one.
Okay, yeah. Anybody else with any questions?
I just throw one last thing in, page 139, number of private sector dwellings improved with local authority grants or loans. With a target of 5 and see about 9 dwellings were improved. Do people know that they can come to the council for grants? It's the big question. I mean, if we've only got 9 people, are there more? Is there a way that we can get this out that there's a people we have to help them to improve their homes via through grants from the council?
It is in the public domain, I understand, but I totally agree with you in terms of comms. We can use different mediums in getting the message out.
Even just a piece in Newport Matters, the magazine, the newsletter that goes out every day.
Yeah, it was in the last.
Was it?
Yeah, no, one before, actually. So last week came out this week. The one before.
We did one, yeah, just after the version, we did the version after Christmas.
Yeah.
Or did the content then. But I think it's a really fair challenge, and it's about owner occupiers, but also some of those grants will also through leasing scheme Wales, which you mentioned, for example, allowing us to get property back into use. So I think it's something we need to keep on the agenda and kind of keep out there.
Because there's a comms perspective to it as well, I think, in terms of getting the message out. And yeah, we're happy to
Yeah, I mean, I do
take that feedback.
Yeah, well, I do a newsletter sort of a month. I can put on there, look, here's the link. Yeah. There are grants available. You know, we as ward councillors can spread the message as well.
Yeah, we can maybe do some key messages for board members so you can then take
Yeah,
and use.
that would be useful.
Yeah, I mean, we are an area of deprivation, so many, it worries me about Bainsville and areas like that, you know, I mean, they're very run down and also people have bought them and done them up, but there's older people who don't have the resources to do them up. So, you know, sorry, Chair, there's on that page actually, because I'd written down that one about the properties bought back as well. The prevent programme, I did prevent training myself years ago when it was first brought in. Is it broadly the same objectives as it used to be?
It is, yeah.
Okay. Right. If people don't know what that is, it's about spotting. How would you describe it?
Signs of radicalisation.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, but and also, yeah, I mean, perhaps, yes, it was. They've rejigged this a bit, I think, over the years, haven't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we do around that at the moment. I think in the past it's really reliant on the team manager going around and delivering those courses, which is not the most efficient way to do things.
Yeah.
So we're pushing it much more to online for
Yeah.
most schools. It'll be online, be some exceptions,
Yeah.
and then looking at, you know, and this is not signed off yet, but looking at the possibility, for example, of making it mandatory training for council staff. Could even look at it as training for members as well.
Yeah.
Actually,
It's also sort of about troubled people, isn't it?
Yeah.
People who seem dissociated, who may, you know, maybe forming the wrong relationships with the wrong people.
yeah,
Yeah, it's about those vulnerable individuals. Just wonder whether we could queue that as a consortium, though, with because every local authority in school and everything's got to do it. So there's got an opportunity for kind of, you know, you could almost pay for an officer between a couple of local authorities. You'd just be going and doing it on a rolling basis, could you?
You could,
It's
yeah.
like liaison with the Home Office, though, isn't it? It's because it's Home Office led.
Yeah,
Although our officers are delivering it, so we could. So,
Any other questions? All happy? Good, what recommendations we got?
Got Councillor Thomas's comment about the toilet strategy. David advised local manager got the timescales at the end of August, September. Councillor Thomas said it'd be good to see what changes being made. Your comment, Councillor Dancher, about the number of schemes currently with Flush going to move things along, and self, Councillor said you were right, about progress. If we can get more information out there, advertise more about your comment about the dwellings that the council grants.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and the link to the, I find it on the council website, yeah.
Is there any other comments, recommendations the committee would like to make?
Progress on the city centre strategy.
Yes. Yeah.
And also information for all members to support homelessness inquiries as well.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Anything else?
Just on that as well, Bill, I just wanted to mention, we are looking at training for members. Doesn't sit with myself as a portfolio holder, housing and planning. But just going back on, mental health training and for members, so they can actually support residents in their areas that are in temporary accommodation, or rough sleeping, etc. That is something Councillor Davis, she's responsible for member development. Councillor Clark, Democratic Services.
Yeah.
That's something that.
Is that signed off?
Um,
I think
Look,
it's, I mean, just working in mental health services myself formerly, I think it's probably quite a deep subject, and these can be quite traumatized and troubled people. It particularly, if we're thinking of engaging with people who've been homeless and perhaps sleeping rough, the complexity of their
needs.
is so great that
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that, I think it's probably best referring them to other people.
No, it's what I was referring to is more of a seminar.
Oh, right.
Awareness raising.
Yeah. Well, the awareness raising is all right, yeah.
Okay, lovely, all done. Thank you very much for your patience and staying to the end. Much appreciated. That's my first.
Very good.
It's one of the worst in the
Yeah.
because the meeting next week, I think it's
On the day.
next Sunday, it'll be the same.
I think, Chair, perhaps what we discussed at the beginning,
One less service area.
I think we do need, I don't feel that I'm contributing anything like what I hope would be my best when we're in a meeting now where we've been here since 1:30. In fact, I had a meeting here before this, so I've been here since 12:30, and I'm past contributing my best now. So I'm just wondering if we can explore ideas about streamlining the meeting, perhaps taking on if you really want to spend 5 hours reading the whole of this document in detail, feel free and chip in with other questions. But Chris is so thorough.
You can split these.
But I think we ought to be. I think we ought to be splitting it, and also I think we also, quite a lot of stuff has come up today where the answer has been, "Well, write to me" or something, and the questions which are ward specific, or dealing with something which is, you've specifically been approached about. I think perhaps we need to think to ourselves beforehand whether we need to put that. Is that how relevant is that in the context of looking and a strategic report.
We shouldn't be raising individual managers.
We shouldn't be, but
I
for
do
this,
try and sort of nip them in the bud, and you also try not to be an idiot as well, and just sort of shut people down.
Well,
You know,
just-
to try
yeah,
to strike,
I just-
strike a balance.
yeah,
you know.
I'm just trying to think of
Yeah.
ways to make it less
Yeah.
arduous sitting
Yeah.
through this.
Well,
rather than
sometimes
stick long.
it's your own experiences in your ward that are related to that broad policy or project.
Well, it gives you insight as obviously, you know, we're all learning from our own boards all the time, aren't we?
Well,
But this,
sometimes examples
this
of that,
is this is the high level direction of the council that we're talking about here.
we can pick that up as a sort of separate agenda items, that's fine.
What about the letter from Jane?
You can't go yet, we haven't finished. We've got ongoing work programme.
We do a breakdown, breakdown's about an hour.
I always do the one online.
Next one, we'll have to do the forward work programme at the end of that agenda item rather tonight, because it should be hopefully about an hour shorter, so it wouldn't necessarily 6 weeks.
Next.
Let's pick it up then.
Minutes.
Yeah. Just got the minutes of the previous meeting.
Well, it's the right day to do a quick brief. I think
You
I
have to
can,
stick to that.
I think I can.
You know where my office is. Yeah. So just look at that. Yeah, great.
Chair, this is the first one that I've been involved with, so I think I'm done with this one.
It does. So you don't want to do the minutes of the last.
No, it's not that I've done.
You won't be able to do it.
You're just going to get time.
Any issues with the minutes of the last meeting? Chris, you usually on the board, but you weren't here, I don't think, were you? You were still-
Did I forget that one?
I did read through them when you sent them and they were fine. I think
Yeah,
they are
right.
actually.
The only, and it relates to the forward work programme, it's said on there, that we would add the bus service update to the forward work programme, but it's not in the forward work programme.
It should be, because I mentioned that.
Yeah, we're trying to get comments still from infrastructure to see where we can fit her in and how they will do the reports, and or whether they will just come through some information reports. So as soon as they get some updates from that.
So I've asked for it to be put on the workbook this year.
Yeah, also just a note as well for the budget, as you remember, early on in the year, it was quite a long meeting, so we're going to experiment with splitting it into two, so we'll have place budget proposals, and then a couple of days later, corporate, so
As
hopefully,
we're doing with this, really, isn't it?
yeah, so hopefully those will be shorter.
And you might have noticed that we've changed the day of the meetings, haven't we, after October?
At the moment, no, not on this.
Right,
It's
okay.
not shown at the moment, however, they could change, but we're
So the proposal potentially for 6% closure is to close up. I'll do it, Mr. Dominic.
No, so closure will be on the day on Friday.
It's only a proposal, I don't think that's firmed up yet.
it's still in
I'm
close.
thinking, I know
It
the
hasn't been
budget,
firmed up yet,
wasn't
but no, it was in the budget, it's gonna happen, as I understand it. Which I was disappointed about.
yes,
but,
so there'll be pushback against that in this very committee.
we did, yeah. So it may be that we have to change our day, so we'll keep you posted on that, as we know a bit more.
Sometimes these things don't happen to a schedule that was previously mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens, but, you know, the proposal was agreed by full council effectively, despite opposition. The council voted on it, so, you know.
Well, it's all, yes, it wouldn't have gone to cabinet, won't it?
Well, it was a full council, actually.
I know, but it came to us first,
Yeah.
didn't it? So we
Yeah,
made
yeah.
recommendations. Then cabinet would have had to have agreed with the recommendations or not.
They didn't agree with them.
And so I think that's what where the thing.
Final say then.
Exactly, yeah.